High Level is a full CRM and marketing platform, and I've used some of the best in the SaaS industry. And we are live from LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Instagram. I think I got them all. It's Revening's Wednesday. Welcome to Wednesday, Revenue Party people. Sorry if there was an awkward pause there. I was actually watching live on YouTube and it wasn't live yet. But welcome to the show. We've got hot topics, no hot prizes. We're going to stop on the hot prizes for now. But we do have hot topics and hot guests coming at you, and it's going to be a great discussion. But of course, before we get into it really quick, I want to invite you to join the newsletter. So we're planning the next retreat. We're doing a lot of stuff, and I'm talking about it every week here on the Wednesday newsletter. So you can subscribe by going to reveting.com. And we do a recap of the show every week there. So you can also, like, if you can't listen in right now and you prefer to read, you can just read it there. And also we give you a heads up on like what's coming up this week. So every Wednesday morning, the Wednesday newsletter is going out. So be sure to catch it and check out my workbook. So people are finishing my workbook and I'm getting good feedback from it. So I feel really good sharing it with you. I have it here on the screen as a QR code, but of course, if you're listening to this later on podcast, you can just go over to reveting.com to look for it. And always just email me at jesse@reveting.com if you can't find it. But the workbook is helping people figure out their audience and build their personal brand. But it's also getting you into high level, helping you schedule posts across social media channels to learn how to become a marketer yourself. You don't necessarily need to hire a marketer, and I run a marketing agency. You can also just learn how to do it yourself. So I enjoy coaching people on how to build email lists, how to do a whole bunch of things, but it starts with the workbook. So start with the free workbook. And if you like that, I would love to talk to you more about how we can help you learn how to take up more space online as a marketer yourself. But you saw it in the intro video or heard it if you're hearing this on podcast, but you can work with Cherry Assistant and do a lot of what we're doing. So, or get help doing what you're doing. It doesn't matter. What Cherry Assistant does is they place you with a virtual assistant somewhere around the world who is able to help you with exactly what you need. So for me, that's creating live streams, duplicating event images, finding new headshots, putting them in, changing the topics, following up with guests. And a lot of that is thanks to the help of Cherry Assistant. So Cherry Assistant is someone that it has sponsored Wednesday for a long time. So DJ Kim is the founder there. And before they founded Cherry Assistant, there was Data Ghost. I don't know if you remember, but Data Ghost was a sponsor of Wednesday and they were acquired. And they actually quoted, there was a quote after the acquisition that they thanked the Wednesday show, for helping them get their first 100 users because it helped them get acquired. So I've loved having this relationship with DJ Kim. I love what they're building at Cherry Assistant, but it has just worked out in a way that has helped me not only scale my own marketing, but the marketing of my clients as well. So Reveting is scaling thanks to Cherry Assistant, and they can help you scale too, be it your sales, whatever it is. I digress. We can talk about it more. And high level, check out a 30-day free trial with my affiliate link on the screen. Otherwise, just go to reveting.com/high level. But it's a marketing automation system as well as a CRM that I use. And I would love to help you use it too. I'm helping people migrate from some of the larger systems that a lot of the businesses are using, larger businesses. I won't name any of them right now, but you know all of them. And some of them are paying 5 figures, sometimes, like 20,000 a year, if not a month, for some of these large systems. And we just don't need to do that anymore. So High Level is a robust, but yes, budget friendly SaaS solution to help you with all of that. So check it out. Would love to talk to you more about that. But I want to get into the show. So let's get right into it. Welcome to the show to our guests. We have a PR expert and a calling expert. So per usual on Wednesday style, it's a back and forth conversation on sales and marketing. So let's bring in Jake and Chris. Thank you so much for joining.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course. And in Wednesday fashion, I'm going to pull up the 2-minute clock. And I want to ask people to introduce yourselves to the Wednesday audience. Who are you? Where were you born? And what brought you to now? Of course, we're all going to go to your LinkedIn profile and check your experiences and your awards. So we already know a lot of that, but we want to know what makes you human and what makes you you. So could you kick us off, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. It's great to be on with both of you today. I think the best way to describe myself is I think I'm a lot like everybody else that's on the show today, everybody that's watching as well. And, really kind of addicted to that adrenaline that comes from solving problems, win-win situations between a business and a prospect, threading that needle, building those relationships. Just really love the whole sales and marketing engine. And for the last 25 years, I've been trying to figure out how I best fit in to all of that. Today, I'm currently the CEO of PhoneBurner. I was born and raised here in the great state of Washington. Worked for a variety of different organizations, but I'm at a great company here at PhoneBurner. For those of you who don't know what PhoneBurner does, we're really all about meaningful conversations and trying to connect businesses with the people that they need to communicate with and get their calls answered. And really, we all kind of here at PhoneBurner subscribe to this fundamental belief that, a single phone call getting answered can change the trajectory, not only of the person placing the call, but also of the person receiving the call. So our mandate here, and I think my personal career mandate, is to try to find the best way possible for businesses to connect with who it is that they need to talk to using, the most powerful form of technology that we all have in every one of our pockets. And so excited to be here today and look forward to having a great conversation.
Oh, with a minute left, way to go. Of course, the phone guy has to keep it quick. And I appreciate that. And I think, you would appreciate the fact that I've been doing some calling this week. I had to listen to Jeb Blount's Fanatical Prospecting book by way of my husband, who had to listen to it because his employer gave it to him. So it was on the car for 6 hours, and I don't know, it just inspired me. So since I got back in January, I've been on the phone and I don't regret it. So I'm excited to talk more about calling. But
Awesome.
Chris, I'm going to put the 2-minute clock up. I also love PR people. So you and I were talking a little bit earlier that PR people, they can be just as sharky as salespeople. And I didn't realize I started actually my career as an intern on the Hill for Senator Durbin, but it was with the PR people. And so they were dealing with like CNN and like, oh man, it was like cutthroat. And I learned a lot there, but then got into marketing, and the PR stuff was always still there, where you're writing press releases and you're trying to get it into these news outlets, and it's cutthroat. And I still use it every day for live streams and for guests, finding guests. I found both of you on a PR related website. And, because of those skills, I'm able to keep not only my show, but my guest show filled with people who want to also be seen. So PR is not dead. And it's still very much alive, because I know you, Jake, have gotten people in some major outlets, but I digress. Tell us your full life story in 2 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just kind of start from the beginning. I was born and raised in Syracuse, New York. I have 2 older siblings. So being the youngest of 3, you've kind of always been the person that's, fighting for the spotlight and for the attention. But as a Leo, I feel like that comes pretty naturally to me. And I mean, aside from being sharky and, being that kind of cutthroat PR person that you kind of have to be sometimes, the reason why I do what I do is just because I really enjoy helping people share their stories and share a level of expertise that they have. So at Ciccarelli PR, that's what we do, is we help people who have a niche expertise or people who have something really interesting to share, get on different podcasts, magazines, digital articles. As Jesse had mentioned, my previous work, I've had people in outlets such as the New York Post, Bloomberg, US News and World Report, Yahoo Life, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. The list goes on and on and on, which is always fun to share. And of course, that's people who have a niche expertise, but also people who might have something inspiring to share, who have a really great story to share. Maybe sharing something will inspire other people to then share their stories and create this sense of community. And of course, for entrepreneurs and people that are building a business, whether you're a consultant or just an entrepreneur that has a product-based company, building that trust is super, super important. And, that third-party credibility that comes from media is definitely a business driver and something that is so essential to growth. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. The reason I found out about public relations was actually through a college tour that I did back when I was looking to go to my undergrad programs. I originally wanted to be a broadcast journalist. I thought I wanted to share the information and share things with the public, but I ended up going to the other side of, I guess, media and being the person that comes up with the idea with a client and then shares it with someone who then shares it with a broadcast journalist who then gets the message out there. So that's, my life story in a nutshell there.
I love that. Well, thank you for sharing. And thank you so much for being on the other side and coming on the show today for this really awesome conversation. Because I'm sure once in a while, you even have to pick up the phone every once in a while.
I do.
And for a lot of our viewers, they are picking up the phone a lot all the time. So we have a lot of leaders who watch, but then below that are entry level, a lot of time SDRs, sales development representatives, who they're making a lot of phone calls as well on a mass scale. But there's a whole lot of ways to make phone calls. Chris, could you kick us off with a very important recap of calling in 2024? We were joking before, at least I was, back in 2022, we'd talk here on the show, like, is cold calling dead? It's very much not dead. And I even admitted, like, I'm making a lot more calls these days. And I think people know now that, like, even with AI, human conversations are still very much important, but you have to be smart about how you're doing it so that you can get across and have your message heard and talk to the right people. So could you get us a recap of 2024?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting mentioning the whole calling is dead notion. And I think one of the trends that I saw, and you probably saw it as well, especially over the last couple of years, we all spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. And one of the trends I saw was that there was an important bit of experience missing from a lot of people's profiles. And that experience was that of coroner, because there were so many people out there that were saying outbound calling is dead. But basically, anywhere you looked, whether it be LinkedIn or message boards, Reddit, wherever, they're all saying the same thing: cold calling is dead, or any kind of outbound calling is dead, for a variety of different reasons. And I think, some of these people are absolutely right. For their individual circumstances, it was dead. And it was dead largely because the strategies that were being deployed, unfortunately, were not modern enough in terms of their considerations to make calling successful for their business or for them individually. And so when we look back at not only 24, 23, 22, and a few years prior to that, I think that there's been a couple of themes that have emerged that we gotta, if we care about using the phone, because again, like I mentioned in my intro, it's really the most powerful form of technology to connect with people one-to-one, next to face-to-face. We've got to be mindful of, I think, four things. And the last year, really, I think, put an exclamation point on these four being really important, and getting these four, like Lego blocks, to really work well together. So a couple of things that I really observed over the last year, and we've heard from some of our customers and a lot of people talking about online. One is the technology that is being used to place phone calls, and how important that is to your strategy. There's so many different options in the marketplace. I mean, it is highly competitive, very saturated. You do a Google search for outbound calling or certain types of dialers, and you're just inundated with responses. And I think one of the things that we've seen over the last few years is the technology choice really matters. And it really matters because of the second and third order consequences that come from using that technology. And so a lot of the people that, I talked to that were that coroner that said it was dead, were using technologies that I think were emphasizing really quantity over quality of outcome. The numbers that they were incentivized by just were really activity-based rather than results-based in many cases. And so they made technology decisions to support that. And at the end of the day, what they were ultimately shooting for didn't happen, get frustrated, throw their hands up in the air and wonder where to turn from there. So I think technology over the last couple of years, that's been really big. And of course, AI and some different things have layered in to give people different things to think about in terms of what they want to do from a technology standpoint. So that's first block is technology. And in 2024, we saw more things come on. Every single one of us has been presented with that Instagram app that shows the AI agent trying to make that call, trying to aspire to make that human connection. And as great as AI is, it's a long way off on that one. The second thing that I think from a trend standpoint that people have started to pay attention to, and those people that have said it is dead maybe didn't pay enough attention to, was really the quality of the data that is fed into that system. There's a lot of debate. There's a lot of different opinions online on who the best data provider is, who's the best lead provider, how do we best use that information in our system. And I think one of the things that we've observed over time is that really, if you ask people, the quality of data that's available in the market has either plateaued or in some cases kind of come down a little bit. Organizations have not been investing enough in understanding the efficacy of that data and how to best use that data. And when you're making calls out and you don't have great data, bad things happen, right? Your calls get more likely to be marked as spam. Calls are not completing. You're not getting to the right person that you're trying to talk to. So I think companies that paid a lot of attention on the data side probably have fared pretty well, but those that maybe didn't pay as much attention as they needed to on the data side maybe didn't do as well as all. This third one actually might be the most important of all. And as you mentioned, we do have a lot of managers that are listening today and leaders, and then we have some individual contributors who are actually, picking up the phone and placing those calls. You can't overemphasize how important it is to do a great job of training people on how to have a really good conversation. And organizations that have neglected it and have really not paid the level of attention that they need to raise the skill set of the people that they've asked to place those calls to really become calling professionals have paid the price. They go out on Indeed and they place a job to hire 50, 100 SDRs, and maybe they have once a week, they'll go over 2 or 3 key tips, but they've not really made training an evergreen part of their regimen, and to really sit down with the people that are placing the calls and put them in a position to be successful when they ultimately get a hello on the other side of it. So I think that that's the third component. And the fourth component from a strategy standpoint, and certainly we've seen evolve over the last, I would say 10 or 15 years, is really as a caller, either as an individual or a company, understanding the phone network ecosystem. Understanding the phone network ecosystem. It is a very complicated place. And there are so many countermeasures on that network designed to stop your good wanted phone call from reaching its destination. Or if it does reach its destination, which is of course mostly the mobile phone, it comes in and says scam on it or spam or whatever. And so I think companies that have really paid a lot of attention to the phone network ecosystem as kind of part of their strategy have fared pretty well. But for people that have, not put together those building blocks of training, understanding the data really well, choosing the right platform, and then understanding the phone network ecosystem, they're the coroners on LinkedIn who are saying outbound's dead. But for those that have paid attention to those things and have configured a system really well, they're having great results, and their businesses are growing and thriving as a result of it.
Yeah, I believe you, because you do have to continue to fill the pipeline. And, I love marketing, and marketing is great. And I think making phone calls has been great for me because I've done a lot of marketing already to close the trust gap. But it's interesting to see it. I don't know, people kind of saying bad things about it. And I was one of those people, guilty at one point, because I'm a marketer. And I was like, people want to look up and they want to do their own research. They don't want to be cold called or interrupted. You're going to be interrupting my day. But that's like the challenge is like a salesperson, right? Is you have to like get them past that interruption, but having the right data surely is helpful. I'm curious, Chris, thanks for that recap. I'm talking about systems and like having the right data of people to call to make sure that your message is right and that you're like getting through and not looking like a spammer to the phone carriers. Then are there any particular systems? Of course, PhoneBurner, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about that and how that helps people. But like, what other like tech tools should people be trying out? And like AI, like where does AI come into all this? And what kind of, can you give us any tips or like actionable items that we can go right now to like improve our calling system?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Of course, I'm going to be the first to plug PhoneBurner because I think that the dialing strategy that we enable our customers to have, which is efficient one-to-one communications, is really what's winning the day. And when you're selecting a technology from a phone standpoint, I think one of the critical thinking questions you got to ask is, does this technology, does it mirror or mimic what spammers do? Does it look like spam? And so when you think about call systems that generate, 10, 20, 30 calls concurrently at the same time, if you're a telephone carrier, does that look like a good wanted one-to-one piece of communication? Or does that look like something that you kind of scratch your head at and like, boy, for all those car warranty calls that our subscribers get, that looks an awful lot like that, which is just tons of volume coming into the system. So I think that you have to develop a fairly simple yet effective set of criteria to evaluate the right technology to use to place these outbound calls. And the first part of that criteria is, how does this system generate calls? And does it look like good calls, or does it look like questionable calls, spam calls, nuisance calls, calls that people are not going to want? Now, that's an important philosophical question to ask, because a lot of people, and for good reason, they're captivated by this notion that, oh my gosh, every single one of my reps can be, shooting out 10, 20, 30 concurrent calls at the same time, which gives us more opportunities to land. But if you're a carrier on the other side, you're a regulator that's prescribing rules for an industry, or you're a carrier in the middle that sees calls that come in from an originating carrier en route to a terminating carrier, you see all that volume come through, it's going to introduce a lot of questions. And those calls are going to be subject to a lot of skepticism. But I think the key takeaway here is, when evaluating a technology, does this technology introduce calls into the network that look scammy, that look spammy? That's number one. Number two is, the carrier that you use matters. Better said probably, is the carrier that your provider uses matters. And so when you're talking to providers, do not be afraid to say, hey, what carrier do you use to place phone calls? Because like everything else in life, carriers are not created equal. Some carriers are notorious for creating and carrying a lot of bad traffic. And guess what? When their counterparts on the terminating side, the terminating carriers, and I'm talking AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, Comcast, you name it, they look at calls coming in from that carrier. And if they say, you know what, this carrier brings us a lot of calls that our subscribers complain about, I'm going to put those calls under greater scrutiny, they're going to get more likely marked as spam. So I think, in addition to what's the dialing philosophy, what looks like spam, what doesn't look like spam, understanding the originating carrier that your provider uses is really helpful. And I think the third thing from a technology standpoint, and this can't be understated, is you've got to work with somebody that you trust and that you can have a really good relationship with. Because of the complexities on the phone network, if you don't have somebody that you can actually pick up the phone yourself and call or engage with, you're going to find yourself, I think, more often than not, frustrated. And so, personally for our business, we've really set a high bar in terms of our ability to help our customers be successful, sit down with them, understand their data, understand what they're trying to accomplish. And I think that that's a really important criteria for everybody else that's buying and using these types of systems is a good relationship can I have with them? Because at the end of the day, the whole reason that you're using the phone is to have good relationships. I'll touch briefly on your AI question. There's no doubt that AI is making an indelible impact in terms of how the phone call is being created and then subsequently delivered, and then the experience that's had on the other end. I think the AI that's going to win, and that has won, is the AI inside of the call experience that helps the human relate closer to the person that they're trying to talk to. And There's also, some neat AI that can be done on the back end that is, establishing rules for routing or optimize different paths to get calls delivered. But I think the one that matters most is really what's put inside the product that helps the person be more successful. There's a lot of bells and whistles in other places that, people dangle their AI functionalities and features. But I think having a skeptical eye to say, hey, will this make my dialers really good once they get on the call is the AI that matters most at this point.
Yeah, that's a good point. And, I kind of wish I had something like that would, sort of pull in all the information when I'm about to call them and do that research for me to make my phone call so much easier and just put it into the script I already have. That maybe it already exists. But yeah, no, thank you so much for that recap. Would love to hear from anyone in the comments. If you have any questions about cold calling, now is your time to plug it in there. We're going to be getting back to cold calling and intermingling it into this public relations topic next. Jake, could you kick us off on public relations for entrepreneurs? So I talk a lot about owned media, but there's also earned media. And, they're both important and they both build trust and they both get us visibility. Can you kick us off on this topic?
Yeah, 100%. And I think, for purposes of this conversation, what definition of public relations are we going to be using? And I like to focus on, for entrepreneurs specifically, that public relations is a tool to help you build trust as well as visibility. And now, like Jesse had just mentioned, you do have a couple different types of media. So one is going to be owned media, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's owned media by your company, by you, like this is an example of owned media by Jessie herself, her newsletter as well, those sorts of things. So what kind of media can you build yourself? Can you start a podcast based on whatever your industry is, whatever your service providers are, all those types of things? But then also, what are these different things that you want to get out into the media, which is going to be earned? And you're earning that whether you're doing it by being an expert, whether you're positioning your product as one of the best products in the market, and those sorts of things. But there's 5 different things I kind of want to focus on real quick, and I'll make it pretty quick here. As a PR person, I feel like I'm always kind of getting right to the point, but PR is huge in building trust for entrepreneurs. So whether you're service or product based, it's the foundation of any successful business relationship, right? So you want to make sure that you're consistent and transparent through your messaging, those sorts of things, what you're sharing. Why should someone work with you over someone else? For myself, I am a service-based entrepreneur. I'm not selling a product, I'm selling the service, which is PR services. Why would someone want to work with me over somebody else? Is it because I focus on helping entrepreneurs specifically, or is it because the track record I have of different media placements and those sorts of things? That's the kind of stuff that you're going to need to be sharing through your earned media. And of course, PR does help shape that public perception and establish that credibility. So if you win an award, or if you're featured in, let's say, the Today Show or something like that, that just gives a whole nother level of credibility because they see this as a real company, a real person, and or a real product as well. Point number 2 is leveraging media relations. And I've made a joke recently that you need to put the relationship and the relations part back into media relations, because a lot of the time I hear from other PR folks or, from journalists and whatnot, that there's not a whole lot of a relationship there anymore with media. They're saying, okay, great, thanks, you featured my client, on to the next person, on to the next connection here. It's really about, I don't like to use the term massaging the relationship, but it's really about building an authentic connection with somebody, right? So it's about saying like, hey, Jesse, what are you working on? What are you going to be doing next month? Or do you have any upcoming coverage on X? Because I have experts in this field, and those sorts of things. So that's another part of media relations. And you're going to want to, craft a compelling pitch there. So I usually say, think about the story you want to share. Think about how you're going to articulate that, and then go ahead and find those media outlets that are going to fit your niche and what you want to share. Don't find the media outlet and then try to bend your story to fit it. I think you need to find people that super, super align with what you're already wanting to share and what you're already wanting to get out there. So that's point number 2, which was media relations. Now, Point three is going to be personal branding for entrepreneurial success. Personal branding is so important, and getting it owned media or earned media is going to help you build that personal brand. You know, what are you known for? Are you known for being someone that's super great in the tech industry, specifically talking about chip processors? Or are you someone that works in the digital signage industry who's really great and has a lot of partnerships with schools? Like, there's so many different avenues you can go with that. And you're going to really want to position yourself as an expert in your field. And of course, you want to maintain authenticity and consistency across all of your platforms. So you can't be talking about, you know, something totally different. You can't be talking about A and then Z here. You got to at least be in ABC land, or, you know, that kind of stuff. That's the way my brain works. ABC land is what I call it. So that's point number three, is personal branding. Point four is going to be thought leadership, of course. Now, I'm sure that we hear thought leadership all the time, and you might even roll your eyes. Thought leadership can be things like, you know, you're writing op-eds, you're writing blog posts for your own media, participating in panel discussions, and different things such as even today is going to be a really huge thing in thought leadership. So doing speaking engagements and webinars are going to be huge in building your personal brand and helping you express that thought leader that's really deep inside all of us. Now, number five is going to be building a community around your brand. So you're going to want to be engaging with your audience through social media and all other channels. Find your audience where they are. So let's say, for example, I did an internship a while ago at a PR agency, and it was around the time of the annual enrollment period. So we were trying to connect with older folks, right? And I was like, older folks are not on TikTok. They're not on Instagram. Some of them are, but largely they're not. So where are we finding these people? You're finding them through radio. You're finding them through these more traditional media. You're finding them through newspapers. So it's really important to
Maybe the phone.
they are. But that's my five main points there. But yeah, that's what I have to say about that.
I don't know if you heard me. I was kind of sneaking in and saying maybe you find those people on the phone.
Yes, call them.
Yes, pick up the phone and not a text message.
Right.
No,
Exactly.
that's great. And I appreciate that and all those things, especially what you're saying about personal branding, because of course I help people build their personal brand. But not just because of that, but the reason I do that is because I saw it work and I just saw the power, and it happens so directly that, you don't have to have a ton of engagement. I think people are really afraid to put themselves out there because they don't get as many likes or they don't get as many comments, or with
Right.
the right people, if you're consistent enough, they do find you. And some brands never get like a ton of likes, but they'll get customers because they find their audience and they speak to them. But I don't know. Yeah, Mallory, you get it. Pick up the phone. But anyway, I digress on that. Chris, clearly you see a little bit of a value in PR and, making time to like go out and show that you're the thought leader on calling. So like, could you kind of talk on PR a little bit just from your perspective? Oh, I can't. Let me see. Somehow you got muted. Wait, there you are. I hear you now.
Okay. I have a great amount of respect for PR, and I think it's important for all of us personally to kind of understand the public relation component of ourselves. And Jesse, I think some of the things that you do and help people out is absolutely quintessential, because there's just so much noise out there. And how are you going to take a message of value to the market, to the people that you're trying to relate to the community that you're trying to build, without some sort of PR strategy? And so, Jake, the things that you do on behalf of your customers, you mentioned some of those wonderful publications and places where people, engage or introduced to people and to the solutions that they offer. Look, you've got to have a strategy for it. And I think that you're remiss if you kind of ignore it and think that you can get away with not having to do it, particularly as we live in a time where, fighting for just that thread of attention in a person's mind is so very difficult to do. And so 100% PR is an important component, I think, to being successful.
Yeah, 100%. There's so much that goes around in the full circle. There's sales and marketing, and then there's PR and calling to get specific. But thank you both for diving in on a little bit of that. And I'm just curious, Jake, what kind of calling do you do?
Yeah. I saw something recently that said like 60% of journalists don't want to be called anymore, like 60 something percent.
Hmm.
And I saw some PR person, I can't remember who it was that I follow, and I remember he or she said something like, stop calling these people. Like they don't want to be called. And I'm like, I think it depends on the kind of media that you're talking about. Like if you're looking at like local broadcast, or something like that. Like I have a client of mine that's based out of Boca Raton, and we're trying to get her on these different local news channels to go on and talk about, maybe mental health or these sorts of things and whatnot. And I think calling is so important. And that's why they have a news desk, right? Because you're not calling like a specific journalist. Like you're calling the news desk and saying, hey, I sent a pitch about X, Y, and Z this day. This is the subject line. Just want to confirm receipt of that email. And then if they're like, yeah, of course, like we got it. And then I'm like, okay, is this something that might be interesting, or can I talk to a news director by chance if they're there? Then that's kind of how you get in. Whereas I feel like, I used to work at a startup where there was an abundance of cold calling, there to get these different folks in and stuff. And I'll be honest, I was pretty bad at sales cold calling, even as a PR person, because I'm usually straight to the point. But with cold calling, like for sales, I feel like you really have to kind of like inch your way into that relationship. Whereas I had already sent these people an email, right? And said like, hey, just want to confirm receipt of this email, versus saying like, hey, is this so-and-so? Like, do you do this? And of course, like Chris might be cringing at me saying this because I'm like, I have no idea what I'm talking about when it comes to sales. But yeah, that's the kind of calling that I do. And I have to say too, it's refreshing to hear a CEO to say that public relations is important and it is valuable, because a lot of the times people don't understand it, and the lack of understanding keeps them from doing it. So I appreciated that.
Proud to give you a shout out. I realize how important it is.
Yeah, definitely. And this is a great conversation. We're going to keep it coming. We have topic 3 coming up, 2025 outlook for calling. So we talked about 2024, what's coming for 2025, and then public relations, a little bit more on driving growth for entrepreneurs. So what could you be doing to drive growth for yourself if you're an entrepreneur, or helping those that you work for? We will be getting back to that right after this amazing message. I've already been telling you all about Cherry Assistant. I'm going to keep telling you about them because they're awesome. They've helped me with everything. They help my clients. But here's a message of them helping someone else as well.
This is Mike, also known as Clean with Mike on Twitter. Mike hired a virtual assistant from Cherry Assistant about 2 years ago. Now he has a $50K per month business, fully managed by a remote operator in South Africa. His VA from South Africa does the following: closing inbound leads on the phone, Yelp and Google and Facebook, manages his CRM and Go high level, deals with rescheduling, cancellations, any issues, hires and manages the cleaners, and sends them daily reports and updates. Mike has a fully cash flowing business managed by a remote operator for only $8 an hour. You can also hire a US equivalent worker in the Philippines, South Africa, Latin America for a fraction of the cost with Cherry Assistant. Be like Mike and grow your business with offshore staff.
So that's an entire menu. They have more the things that a lot of their virtual assistants help with. You can use that QR code to check out Cherry Assistant and just give them a call and explore it. Maybe it's not right for you, but maybe it is. And maybe it's time for you to start delegating, because for me, it has been extremely helpful. When I was, creating all of the show materials myself and doing everything for my clients myself, it was a different life. So just get some help. There is help out there, and there are people out there who want to help you. So check out Cherry Assistant. I highly suggest them. And also I highly suggest High Level. So I was talking about them a little bit pre-show, but I want to pull up my QR code again for people who are watching. But you can also, if you're hearing this on podcast, just go to reveting.com/high level. But for me, High Level, it is my social media planner. You can just basically like check a calendar, and I can see all the posts that are going to go out when, what we're talking about. I can also manage email there. We have marketing email going out from there. We have phone calls going out there. There's like a little auto dialer in High Level. So as I have leads who flow in either through my workbook or other places, then I can just use the auto dialer right there. So a lot of people use these tools with their employer from, their other tools, and they spend a lot of money on them. But like, you can start a side hustle, and get high level for just $97 a month. In fact, they have a special program coming up, an event. If you want the link, just email me, Jessie@reveting.com. I can get you into it, and I'd love to get you access there. But they're basically putting on an event to teach people to create a social media marketing agency. And that's essentially what I've done, but they're just going to teach you how to do it. And they're awesome. And they're going to help you get set up with everything. So just create your free high level trial here, and then I will help you get into that event if you're interested. So just send me an email. But let's get back on into it. But next topic is an outlook for calling. And so we talked about the recap of calling, and I'm curious about the outlook for calling. I mean, at some point, is there going to be AI calling outbound? I mean, what's going to happen in 2025?
Boy, what a great question. And I hope we never are in a future where the only thing we communicate over the phone with is robots, because I think that would really be a terrible future to live in for a variety of different reasons. I think when you look at 2025, there's a couple of things that concern me, almost to the point of scaring me for phone calls, and then there's some things that I'm really excited about in 2025. And so I'd like to walk through just a couple of them. This is maybe you're going to hear me say this question and people are going to be like, this guy's nuts. But I think if you hear me through, it makes a lot of sense. So to set the stage, for everybody that's a manager that's listening, or leads a call center operation, and then for those of us that are, individual callers that place phone calls, there's a lot to be made about, having your calls have got to be branded, right? And so I think the question that I think is kind of a crazy one to ask, but makes sense to ask is the phone call going to become a luxury item? Is the phone call going to become a luxury item? And when you think about it, there's a ton of money that is being asked of businesses to brand their phone calls so that when that call appears on a person's device, it shows up with their name, maybe the logo, reason for the call, all that. And I'm not suggesting that that's bad in terms of its, intent. But what I am concerned about is that if branding is a prerequisite for every call to be answered, and I'm arguing that's not the case for every single call, the problem is that we're going to price a lot of people out. If you've got to pay between a nickel and 10 cents or 50 cents or whatever the number is for a brand to be presented on every call, we're going to price a lot of people out. And who is going to be impacted by that? Well, companies that are under margin pressure, larger companies, right? That are like, hey, we got to cut our margin somewhere. So we're not going to have to go pay this branding fee that's out there. And so we're going to go away from the call, which then means all those jobs are going to go away from the call. And then if you're an individual, let's say you're an independent insurance agent and you use the phone as a primary tool to reach your audience. Well, if you suddenly start to have call branding fees, in the hundreds of dollars, that's going to have you rethink using the phone and maybe the people that you employ on your behalf to place those calls to prospects. And so I don't want the phone call to become a luxury item where there's this prerequisite that exists out there that you've got to brand every single call. Because I don't think we want to find ourselves in a world where, phone calls are reserved only for high value interactions with elite customers and prospects. This is a channel that by design is available for the masses, and we need to keep it there. And so it scares me that there are these situations that exist where people are potentially under pressure from a cost standpoint to just place a phone call where they walk away from it. So that concerns me in the future. And there seems to be I'll call it innovations that come out every so often that is just layering fee after fee after fee after fee on calls being placed. I think the second thing that concerns me, and I don't want to be Chicken Little and the sky is falling, because I do have some things that I think are pretty exciting and really robust for calling's future in 2025 and beyond. But the second thing that scares me is, we've talked about it a few times here, with so much AI being driven and put into our face, I don't think we want to find ourselves in a future where we erode why the call was so good in the first place. The phone call was good because when people get together to talk about something that there's common interest between them with, it is an unbelievable tool. And so when we think in terms of, oh, that's tempting to go have AI place all these phone calls. One, you got some regulatory nightmares that you got to kind of sift through and figure out to make sure that you're not in breach of certain either federal or state laws. But two is think about the first impression that you want to make to the people that you're trying to reach out to on the phone. If you have an AI only or an AI first agent making those initial calls, is that the best representation of your brand? You know, the hallucination rate still on some of this stuff, on some of this AI is pretty high. And until it's perfect, which I don't think it ever will be, because it will never be able to replace the well-trained, highly skilled professional person, I think we need to be careful on that. And so I think understanding and putting some guardrails around AI is important. And it concerns me if we just take a tact of, hey, it's just easier, it's cheaper, and it's faster, and we can just put more out there, because the last thing that all of us want to do, and the last thing any of us will raise our hands to accept, is getting more phone calls that are irrelevant. And when you reduce the cost of doing something to effectively zero, that's what happens. Look at our email inboxes. So that's part of, I think, what concerns me on a go-forward basis. Now, what excites me in 2025 is that I think that companies, those of you that are individuals and that dial and try to connect with people, I think that people that adopt a mentality of the phone call that I'm about to place or that my company places is a can't miss event. And everything about that phone call is configured in a way to be a can't miss event. You're going to win. And I think that as we look at and draw from inspiration, we can get into that from a couple of other companies. I think that that's entirely possible, because every single person that's either listening or, Jesse, Jake, you guys, we've all had an example of when we've gotten that call that maybe we weren't expecting, but it was a can't miss event because it captured our attention. It brought us high value, and it made us better after we got off the call than before we answered it. And I think companies that have their calling strategy, how do we make these calls that we're placing can't miss events? They're going to win. And they're going to win big, not only in 25, but well into the future.
I love that. And I love the idea of, like, how do you get to the place where making, like, someone receiving your phone call is a can't miss event. And I mean, I'm sure, like, building a personal brand and closing the trust gap with your buyers is part of it. But, also just calling the right people at the right time, and understanding their pain in a way that you can actually provide help to them. But man, that's so powerful. So want to hear in the comments more from anyone. What are your thoughts on calling for 2025? What would you add? And man, so important. Make sure that you're making phone calls, everyone. It's not dead. And please, I don't want to be called with outbound AI. Maybe if it's at a place where, like, the AI could just prompt me, sort of like a voicemail drop or something, or maybe not a voicemail drop. Maybe that's a bad example, but like something like a dialer where it just puts the person on the phone with me. Maybe if it can prompt me to, like, call the right people, I don't know, to outbound the right people, but to have actual bots doing it just sounds crazy. But I digress. Let's get into our fourth topic, back to public relations and driving growth for entrepreneurs specifically. And just imagine you end up in the Wall Street Journal, you end up, getting some earned media, you build your trust with your audience, with your owned media, and then they're excited to get your phone call. But how do we drive that growth, Jake?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first thing that entrepreneurs have to look at, specifically startup founders who are looking to fundraise or are actively fundraising from investors or venture capitalists. You need to align your PR strategies with business goals. So, really look at your overall business objectives. Is your main business objective to increase awareness, increase sales, increase trust? And I think that's a big thing too that a lot of people overlook too, is that as a business goal, it should be to have a better reputation in your industry or to continue competing with different people in your industry as well for this kind of like share of voice. Um, and then, of course, be mindful that you might have to pivot PR strategy if you're pivoting and evolving your different business needs. And especially as a startup, that's going to happen. So always keep your PR people informed, your communications people informed if you're working with them. But if you're not, as a lot of entrepreneurs are trying to do it themselves, make sure that you're mindful that your PR strategy has to evolve and pivot along with a pivoting business need. Now, there's two other things that I really want to focus on. One is going to be crisis management. And I think this is something that a lot of people are fearful of. So they're like, maybe someone at your company says something and it gets taken the wrong way and then it gets spun into this thing. And I think that's really about an opportunity to turn a challenge into an opportunity. Instead of just rolling over and dying and saying, oh my gosh, like this horrible thing is ruining my company and these sorts of things. I don't know if it was Chris Jenner who said it, but someone said any press is good press. And I guess I have to slightly agree with that because there's always a way to bounce back, right? There's always a lesson learned from a crisis. You understand that what someone did was offensive to a certain audience. And then now you can also build trust with those people by showing that you're willing to talk about the hard things. You're not just trying to sweep these things under the rug or, kind of hide behind these different things here. And just use these crises as an opportunity to show resilience and show your commitment to your customers and to your stakeholders. The other point I want to make too is enhancing your investor relations with effective PR. So PR can really help you attract and maintain investor interest. So whether you're in VentureBeat or you're in TechCrunch or you're on some sort of LinkedIn Live and you're connected with these different investors, they're going to see that you're actively putting yourself out there and that you're trying to raise awareness in these sorts of things. And then, of course, you're going to want to communicate different milestones and success. And that's going to go out to potential investors, current investors, and different stakeholders as well. So if you reached 1,000 subscribers or 1,000 customers on your app, I think that's a really important story to tell, whether it's through your owned or earned media. And then, of course, you're going to be building investor confidence through different updates and transparent communication, whether that's through an owned media channel of like an investor newsletter, or you're sharing these different things about your company and these different milestones or what's ahead or a strategic partnership. It's going to attract investors and it's going to make your current investors really happy to see that they're putting their money somewhere that's, super, I guess, what am I trying to say? I want to say growable, but I know it's not a word. Growth-driven companies, and those sorts of things. So PR is a huge tool in these different things. And I think it's a lot of things to consider that startup entrepreneurs don't think of. And then, of course, you can take these same strategies if you are a service-based or product-based company. Just think about what your business goals are and your strategies and make sure that your PR aligns with it, because there's long-term value in PR while you're sustaining different growth and expansion. So those are my main points there, Jesse.
Ooh, I love all those. Okay,
Yeah.
so could you dig into that a little bit more in terms of like where could you really go with that? Like you were using the word like growable, but maybe like profitable.
Yeah.
How do you tie it back to like the end goal? Like how do you measure it?
Yeah, 100%. Like let's say you share with your investors that for 2025, you want to reach 10,000 subscribers on your app, right? And maybe you hit a milestone of 2,500 in the first month, like in January, and you're already 25% from your goal. That's a huge story to tell, right? Like you saw X percent month over month growth, or you're projecting higher month over month growth in this industry. And then, of course, positioning your C-suites or the entrepreneur / founder themselves as a expert in that industry and saying, we're seeing X work for our company in Y industry. And here's why we think this strategy is going to be effective for sustaining long-term growth. and these sorts of things. And that also positions you as a business expert as well, rather than just, what industry your company's in.
So interesting.
Yes.
So I'm curious to hear from you a little bit on this, Chris, too, just because I see you, like building your personal brand and also going on shows. So like there's probably been a way that you guys have tied it back as well. Did that all like resonate true with you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the one thing about PR that I particularly love is when you're mission driven in terms of what it is that you're trying to do as a group of people coming together in the form of a business. PR is an awesome tool to have to be able to get the message out there broadly. And it's not just about, cold transactional sales. It's really, I think, why the whole reason those of us that feel like we've got the entrepreneurial bug, we do it in the first place, is we want to change the world. And I think PR is a very effective tool for if we're working on something that matters to a lot of people, leveraging PR as a tool to be able to get the message out there to as many people as we possibly can to ultimately do one thing. Give them something to think about, something different to think about that can help them with a problem that they currently have and get them on a path to solving it. And PR does that in very effective ways, and a big believer of it, both for you as an individual and what it is that kind of your personal mission is about. And then, of course, from the company side, what it is that you're trying to do to help your customers out.
100%. Man, well, there you have it. And we only have 4 minutes left, so I better hop right to the guru of the week. So in good old-fashioned Wednesday style, I'm going to pull myself out and put the gurus up. If you both could tell the listeners why they should go follow this week's gurus of the
I'll let you kick it off if you want.
Yeah, and as I'm looking on my screen, I see Ashley, who is in front of me. Ashley, I don't know you, but I'm sure you're a wonderful person. But there we go.
There we go.
There we go. So I'm gonna try this right here. Follow Mallory Lee. So I'm very fortunate to have Mallory as a colleague here at PhoneBurner. Valerie heads up all of our revenue operations, and after a very long and exhaustive search to try to find somebody to help us raise our game from a revenue operations standpoint, and quite frankly find a great executive leader for our team, we were very fortunate and blessed to come across Mallory. Mallory, I think, has about 8,000 followers already on LinkedIn. And the reason why I think that she has so many followers is that she's unbelievably authentic. She's very gifted. She's an unbelievable hard worker. Not to mention that she's a great wife to her husband and a wonderful mom to her kids. But she really is, I think, a tremendous resource, a library of different perspectives in terms of how to really take your revenue operations to that next level. And so she's been with us now at PhoneBurner for a couple of months. And when you think back in terms of best decisions you make as you recap your year, undoubtedly right there is having Mallory join our team. So I can't say enough about her, and I certainly hope that you give her a follow. She does a little podcasting herself, and I think that you'll enjoy the material and perspectives that she has.
And I can't stress enough, follow, Ashley Dennison. She has been a great mentor to me. I had the pleasure of working for her under comms consultants back in November, helping her out with some LinkedIn outreach and those sorts of things. Ashley's great. She's a continued innovator in the PR and communication space. She created comms consultants as a way for companies, agencies, everyone alike who's looking for a communications, PR, marketing consultant, whatever it may be in the industry, connect with these people more easily and kind of almost remove the middleman there, really make it easy to connect and hire these people. So follow Ashley. I'm going to let her LinkedIn speak for herself. She posts super often, great tips, and there's a lot of great engagement underneath Ashley's posts as well. So great folks to connect with that are already in Ashley's network too.
Awesome. Looks like she's seeing it. We gave her a tag and invite everyone else. Go tag her, go follow her. Thank you so much for sharing your gurus of the week and for coming on Wednesday today. This has been a really exciting conversation to be able to hear a recap of calling, as well as what to look forward to in 2025 from you, Chris, was major. And we've never had a PR person on Wednesday. And I love this conversation because even though wouldn't really call myself a PR person, I work in, I guess, PR world a little bit every once in a while. Yeah, media, exactly. I love it. And, I have a high respect for that world. And I think it's so important. I think businesses, when you're on a growth trajectory, you should work with PR people and smart ones. Have them on your side because they are very powerful. But congratulations to our gurus of the week. Thank you, Chris. And thank you, Jake, for coming on the show. Before we go, real quick, could you both tell the audience how they could reach you if they wanted to work with you? And if there's anything else you want to plug about your company and what you're doing? We'll start with you, Jake.
Yeah, so follow me on LinkedIn, of course. Feel free to connect with me. I love doing virtual coffees. I'm that annoying person that you might hate in your LinkedIn DM saying like, hey, would love to connect. Let's do a virtual coffee. Promise that I'm a real person if you get that message from me. You can also find my website. It's just jakeciccarellipr.info. You can also send me an email to jake@ciccarellipr.info. And Ciccarelli is just my last name. So, find me there, find me on LinkedIn. And then, of course, if you're looking for credibility building services, someone to help you really hone in on your story and what you should be sharing with the world, feel free to connect with me. I'm always happy to do a free 30-minute chat of some sort just to kind of help you out. And then if you want to work together long-term, short-term, I'm open to it. So connect with me at any of those places.
Thank you so much, Jake. And how about you, Chris? How could people reach out to you?
Yeah, no, I think to reach out to me, I'd ask you to ask a simple question of yourself. There's a continuum in the phone call. And that continuum is on the left-hand side, is this an unwanted interruption, the call that I'm about to place? And on the far right, is this a high value interaction that you're going to have? And if you're on that side that, hey, my calls are high value interaction and I need more of them answered, go to PhoneBurner.com and connect with me there at PhoneBurner.com. I'm on the About Us page. Of course, I'm on LinkedIn, and I represent and am part of a great team of people that would love to hear from any of you if you want to get more of your calls answered in 2025. We'd love to have the conversation with you, and wish you all the best of luck as we go into this new year with endless possibilities ahead of us.
That's amazing. Well, I just put PhoneBurner.com and also tagged you both in the comments. So I hope everyone will go and connect with both of you. And if you do, let Jake and also Chris know that you heard about them from our show. But thanks again to both of you for showing up. And we hope you all have a great week. Until next week, I'll go ahead and end our live stream. See you later.
Great job, Jesse. Great job. Thank you.
Good job. Bye-bye.